There is a prison that has no walls, no bars, no guards, no chains. And yet, billions of people wake up inside it every single morning. They choose their clothes inside it. They choose their words inside it. They smile when they don't want to. They stay quiet when they should speak. They shrink themselves down, smaller and smaller, just to fit inside a space someone else built for them. This prison has a name. It's called What Will People Think? And today, I'm going to tell you about a man who was born into that prison, literally, and walked out of it free. Not because his circumstances changed, not because his life got easier, but because he learned a secret that most people never hear. A secret the Stoics discovered 2,000 years ago and that the modern world has spent 2,000 years trying to bury. Stay with me, because by the end of this, you will never look at other people's opinions the same way again. His name was Epictetus, and the first thing you need to know about him is this: he had nothing. No home that was truly his, no freedom to go where he wanted, no right to speak without permission, no power over his own body. He was a slave, property of a Roman official named Epictetus, in a world where a slave was considered slightly above furniture and slightly below livestock. One day, his master decided to show his guests what it meant to own a man completely. He grabbed Epictetus by the leg and began to twist. Slowly, deliberately, Epictetus looked at him, calm as still water, and said, "You're going to break it." His master twisted harder. "Didn't I tell you?" The leg broke, and Epictetus didn't scream, didn't beg, didn't cry. He simply said, "I told you so. Now I want you to stop and sit with that for a moment. Because this isn't a story about pain tolerance. It isn't about toughness in the way we usually think about it. This is a story about a man who had been so completely stripped of everything the world said mattered: safety, status, comfort, respect, that he had been forced to find something the world couldn't take. And what he found was this: your body can be owned, your time can be stolen, your freedom can be caged. But your mind, your inner world, belongs to no one but you. That was the beginning of Epictetus's philosophy, not from a lecture hall, not from wealth or privilege, but from the floor of a Roman estate with a broken leg and not a single person in the world who was required to care. And it became one of the most powerful ideas in the history of human thought. Let me ask you something, and I want you to be honest, not with me, but with yourself. When was the last time you didn't do something you wanted to do because you were afraid of what someone would say? When was the last time you did do something you didn't want to because you didn't want to disappoint someone? When was the last time you stayed quiet in a room, not because you had nothing to say, but because you were performing a version of yourself that felt safer than the real one? Most people, if they're honest, will answer, yesterday, this morning, 5 minutes ago. And here's what makes that so devastating. It's not that we care what people think sometimes. It's that we've built our entire identity around it. Psychologists call it sociotropy, the tendency to base your sense of self-worth on approval from other people. And studies show it's one of the leading drivers of anxiety, depression, and what researchers call chronic self-concealment, the habit of hiding who you really are even from the people closest to you. We perform all day, every day. We have a work version of ourselves, a family version, a social media version, a version for strangers, a version for our parents that we put on like an old coat we don't quite fit into anymore. And underneath all of those versions, somewhere quiet and tired and waiting, is the actual you. The one who stopped coming to the surface a long time ago because it wasn't safe. The Stoics saw this clearly. They didn't have social media or performance reviews or comment sections, but they understood with terrifying precision the damage that comes from building your inner world on the opinions of others. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, the most powerful man alive, wrote this in his private journal, not for publication, not for legacy, just for himself at night when no one was watching. He wrote, "I have often wondered how it is that every man loves himself more than all the rest of men. but yet sets less value on his own opinion of himself than on the opinion of others. Read that again. He loves himself more than anyone, but trusts himself less than anyone. That is the contradiction at the heart of the approval trap, and almost every human being alive is living inside it right now. Now I want to teach you the single most important idea in Stoic philosophy. The one concept that, if you actually understood it, not just intellectually but in your gut, would change the way you move through the world overnight. The Stoics called it the dichotomy of control. And Epictetus put it like this, in the very first line of his most famous work. Some things are within our power, while others are not. That's it. Sounds almost too simple, doesn't it? But pull that thread, and the whole sweater of your anxiety unravels. What is within your power? Your thoughts, your choices, your effort, your character, how you respond to what happens to you. That's it, that's the whole list. What is not within your power? Everything else. Other people's opinions of you. Their moods, their judgments, whether they like you, whether they approve, whether they understand, whether they stay. Epictetus said, "Men are disturbed not by the things which happen, but by the opinions about the things." Think about that. The thing that's breaking you right now, today, is probably not an event. It's your story about the event, and specifically, your terror about what other people's story about the event says about you. Your boss's offhand comment wasn't about your competence, but your brain turned it into a verdict on your worth. That person didn't text back, and your mind constructed an entire prosecution. Someone looked at you a certain way, and your nervous system treated it like a threat to your survival. Because somewhere along the line, approval became oxygen, and you forgot how to breathe without it. Here is what Epictetus, the slave with the broken leg, would say to you right now. Make the best use of what is in your power, and take the rest as it happens. You cannot control what they think. You were never supposed to. The attempt to control it is not virtue. It is suffering disguised as caution. It is a prison you walk into willingly every single day and lock from the inside. Here's something almost no one will tell you. The whole system, the entire social machine that taught you to live for approval, was never designed to make you happy. It was designed to make you manageable. Think about how you were raised. From the moment you were old enough to understand language, you were taught that good behavior meant approval and bad behavior meant disapproval. You were trained, as systematically as any animal in a laboratory, to link your sense of safety to the reactions of the people around you. Good job, warmth, acceptance, love. Bad boy, bad girl, withdrawal, cold shoulder, shame. This isn't a conspiracy, it isn't even malicious. Your parents were doing what their parents did. Teachers were maintaining order. Society was passing down its code. But the result, the unintended result, is a generation of adults who cannot make a single decision without first running it through an invisible panel of judges. Seneca, the great Stoic philosopher who served as advisor to one of Rome's most dangerous emperors, wrote this in a letter to his friend. "It is not that I am brave, but that I know what is not worth fearing." Other people's opinions, not worth fearing. Because here is the truth they don't tell you. The people whose approval you're killing yourself to earn, they are not thinking about you. Right now, the person whose opinion you lost sleep over last night, they are buried inside their own performance, their own fears, their own version of this exact trap. The crowd that you imagine watching your every move. They are the crowd watching their crowd. It is mirrors all the way down. Marcus Aurelius in Meditations put it with brutal economy. How much time he gains who does not look to see what his neighbor says or does or thinks, but only at what he himself is doing. How much time? Not just peace, not just confidence, time. Because the mental energy you spend managing, monitoring, and anticipating other people's perceptions of you is not free. It is the most expensive currency you spend, and you spend it every waking hour. I want to tell you about 3 people. They lived centuries apart, They faced completely different circumstances, but they all arrived at the same place, and what they found there changed them forever. The first is Cato the Younger. Cato was a Roman senator at a time when Rome was tearing itself apart. Julius Caesar was seizing power. Corruption was everywhere, and nearly every man of influence was bending, making deals, switching loyalties, saying whatever kept them safe and comfortable. Cato refused. He was mocked, excluded, called an idealist, a fool, an obstacle. Caesar himself reportedly said that Cato was the only man he feared, not because of his army, but because of his consistency. Cato wore old clothes in a city obsessed with fashion. He walked barefoot in a city obsessed with appearance. He said exactly what he believed in a chamber full of men performing carefully calculated versions of their beliefs. And when everything collapsed around him, when Caesar won, when the Republic fell, Cato did not beg, did not bargain. He simply refused to live in a world that required him to be someone else to survive. His life ended on his own terms. And 2,000 years later, we still say his name. The men who mocked him. Forgotten. The second person is a woman most people have never heard of. Her name was Hypatia of Alexandria. She was a mathematician, astronomer, and philosopher in 4th century Alexandria, and she was the most brilliant mind in her city at a time when Alexandria was the intellectual capital of the known world. Every day she faced the judgment of a society that did not believe a woman had the right to occupy the space she occupied. Every day people told her, through their stares, their dismissals, their hostility, that she should be smaller, quieter, less. She taught anyway. She wrote anyway. She walked the streets of Alexandria in the robes of a philosopher, a public declaration in every step that she had decided who she was and would not be argued out of it. She was not indifferent to the world. She engaged it fully, passionately, but she had separated the world's verdict on her from her own. That is the distinction the Stoics drew. Not caring about people, but not needing their approval to know your own value. The third person is someone you might recognize more easily. His name doesn't matter. He could be anyone. He's sitting at a table right now, somewhere in the world, with a business idea he's never told anyone about. A creative project he works on at midnight when everyone else is asleep. A version of himself he's been building quietly, alone, because the moment he says it out loud, it becomes something other people get to have opinions about. And so he waits. For the right moment, for more certainty, for permission that will never come from the place he's looking for it. Epictetus would look at that man and say, with complete compassion and zero sentimentality, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid with regard to external things. In other words, the cost of growth is always paid in other people's opinions. You do not get to expand and be approved of simultaneously. You have to choose. I want to describe something to you. Not a concept, an experience. Think of a moment in your life, even a small one, when you did exactly what you believed was right, completely regardless of what anyone watching would think. Maybe it was standing up for someone. Maybe it was leaving a room you didn't belong in. Maybe it was starting something new, saying something true, ending something false. Remember how that felt. There's a specific quality to that feeling. It's not euphoria, it's not triumph, it's quieter than that. It feels like breathing properly for the first time in a while. That feeling is what the Stoics called eudaimonia. It's usually translated as happiness, but that word doesn't do it justice. A better translation might be the deep satisfaction of living in alignment with who you actually are. And here is what's remarkable about it. It doesn't depend on a single external thing going right. Not your bank account, not your relationships, not your reputation. Epictetus was a slave. He didn't have any of those things, and he was, by all accounts, one of the most contented human beings who ever lived. Because contentment, the Stoics said, is not something you find. It is something you stop looking for in the wrong places. You have been looking for it in the mirror of other people's approval. And the Stoics are telling you, with 2,000 years of evidence, it is not there. It was never there. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." Not in praise, not in achievement, not in being understood. In his own soul. Now I don't want to just leave you with beautiful ideas, because ideas, as the Stoics themselves insisted, are only as good as what you do with them. So let me give you 4 things you can start practicing, not tomorrow, not next week, but today. The first is called the deathbed test. When you feel the pull of approval, when you're about to change yourself to fit someone else's expectation, ask one question. On the last day of my life, will I care what this person thought? Usually the answer arrives instantly, and it is almost always no. The opinion you are torturing yourself over today will not matter in a year, in 10 years, in a lifetime. The Stoics called this memento mori. Remember, you will die, not as morbidity, but as liberation. Death, paradoxically, is the greatest teacher of what actually matters. The second practice is the opinion audit. For one full day, just one, every time you make a decision, notice if you are making it for yourself or for an audience. You don't have to change anything yet, just notice. Notice when you dress for the crowd, when you soften a real opinion to avoid friction, when you say yes when your whole body means no. Just notice. Epictetus said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." But you cannot know what you would be until you can see clearly what you are currently being, and why. The third is learning to tolerate the discomfort of disapproval. Because here's the thing no one tells you. When you first start living on your own terms, it doesn't feel like freedom. It feels like anxiety. It feels like you've done something wrong. That discomfort is not a warning sign. It is a withdrawal symptom. Your nervous system has been so deeply trained to treat approval as safety that its absence feels like danger. It is not danger, it is just unfamiliar. Sit with it, breathe through it, let it pass. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." The fourth, and this is the most important, is to find something worth being disapproved for. The most alive people in history were not the most liked. They were the most committed. They were people who found something, a truth, a calling, an idea, a love that mattered more to them than the comfort of agreement. Cato found political integrity. Hypatia found knowledge. Epictetus found philosophy, the philosophy of the free mind. What have you found? Or more truthfully, what have you been afraid to find because finding it might cost you someone else's approval? The Stoics are not asking you to stop loving people. They are not asking you to stop caring about the world. They are asking you to stop outsourcing your identity to it. Let me bring this back to Epictetus one last time. After his leg healed, crooked, never right again, he was eventually freed from slavery. He went on to become one of the most celebrated philosophers in the Roman world. Emperors sought his counsel. The brilliant and powerful traveled great distances to sit at his feet. And here is what he never stopped saying, not when he was a slave, not when he was free, not when he was famous. Seek not the good in external things, seek it in yourself. He did not find freedom when his chains were removed. He found it on the floor of that estate with a broken leg, when he realized, truly realized, that no one could reach the place inside him that mattered. That place is yours too. It has always been yours. The people you have been performing for, they are living inside the same cage you are. Many of them are looking at your life and wishing they had the courage to be more like the version of you that only comes out when no one is watching. You are not failing by being yourself. You have been failing by being everyone else. Marcus Aurelius, in the last pages of Meditations, wrote something so simple it almost disappears. When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. But then, and this is the part people skip, none of them can hurt me. No one can implicate me in ugliness. Because the only person who can give away your inner freedom is you. Stop building your life around the verdict of people who will never truly know you. Stop shrinking yourself into spaces designed by someone else's comfort. Stop waiting for permission from a jury that was never appointed, never qualified, and never had a right to judge. You were not born to be approved of. You were born to be alive.